Welcome to the Tea Party with Marty Abernathy, a show starring a binary trans woman born in the body of a non-binary atheist, trade unionist, equality advocate, and an Oako syndicalist that self-identifies as an unhinged fear pimp, outraged brigade commander, Breeze Peach police officer, SJW, and a bad faith agent of chaos.
Okay, everybody, we can get started. Some random geek is here, along with Jordan Joan P in the chat. Welcome, y'all, to tonight's edition of the Tea Party. By the way, if you want to help the show, go to teapartypodcast.com. Become a patron. We're down to 2. I know times are tough and people have to withdraw their help, and it's okay. But if you can pick up the slack for where our other comrades left off, I'd appreciate it. TeaPartyPodcast.com. You can find all my socials there. You can follow me just about everywhere that I am at. Tonight on the show, it's weird because we're gonna talk about a subject that I don't normally talk about. We're gonna talk about abortion. And I feel pretty passionate about abortion. In fact, if you Google trans advocate and abortion, you'll see that trans advocate, and this is because Kristen Williams does a lot, but you can get funding for abortion related expenses. Trans advocate supports abortion rights as bodily autonomy issue and regular volunteers as clinic defenders. Here's the thing. Abortion isn't a trans woman's issue. But if it's about bodily autonomy, it is, because you should support bodily autonomy for everyone, not just yourself. So, yeah. So that's what the show is going to be about tonight. And it's going to be pretty specific because we'll go ahead and get into it. I saw this video today, and it's from somebody I would consider her a liberal. I know that's a dirty word, but some of her videos are quite funny. And she made this video. Let me switch over to my and I didn't see. You can see the trans advocate page. I opened it up and you guys couldn't see it. It's because I suck. Sorry. So this is Nikki New. Not a good picture, but she posted this.
How about we talk about the real reason Republican lawmakers are pushing to ban abortion? It has nothing to do with an unborn baby's rights. It is a full-blown assault on women, primarily Black women. Let me explain. Banning abortion nationwide would lead to a 21% increase in the number of pregnancy-related deaths overall, and a 33% increase among Black women. Let me tell you why they're targeting and attacking Black women. 90% of Black women voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Black women have been the spearhead of social justice movements throughout American history. Black women have also led the charge in addressing sexual violence and paving the way for the Me Too movement. Black women are powerful, and white men can't stand it. The abortion bans have nothing to do with saving the babies, and everything to do with the continued assault on Black women.
Now, you might think that's okay, but there's a lot of things in there that aren't okay. Here's an example.
I'm not mad white women are mad about this bill. I'm mad white women are surprised.
No, because the way that white women have been showing their true colors these last few days is just really something. If you dare to even suggest that white women have at any point in history chosen whiteness over solidarity and girl power, they get so offended, but it is like demonstrably true. literally, I just saw a white woman's response to this video that I'm stitching was, white women suffered too. We were raped. We were mistreated, blah, blah, blah. Like, no one is saying that y'all weren't mistreated under the patriarchy, but the fact that you're hearing a conversation about something that happened very specifically to Black women and you're insisting on making it about you somehow is the problem. Black women been talking about this kind of stuff. Native women, like, all of these people have been saying stuff, and y'all didn't really pay any attention until it affected you. Now it's this world-ending crisis, and y'all are acting shocked because you've never had to experience anything like this before.
And that's a pretty good summation, but D here is a little bit more succinct.
Now, don't hate on this original poster, but this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Let me enlighten you before you think to put up another gaslighting post like this. They're not after Black uteruses. They want yours. Right now, if a Black woman was to go to a hospital in Texas and want an abortion, they would be more than happy to fucking give that woman an abortion. See, what's going on is your white men are panicking because your numbers are declining. So what do? They start taking your reproductive rights. Stop trying to make this a Black people, all women issue, because it's not. You know goddamn well it's not. They've been trying to eradicate our races for years. They're not going to stop now. Stop trying to gaslight us into getting into a fight that you guys started in the first place. My cousin actually got a message. Do you know how many white women were out there during Black Lives Matter? Did you want a fucking cookie? Who started Black Lives Matter? Black women. The first Pride protest, a Black woman. The fucking vote this year. You guessed it, Black women. We don't need lessons in protesting. You do.
Wow. That is on fire, on point. And here is Glam Melanin with a pretty hot take herself.
White women will never run low on audacity. So I have gotten DMs and I've seen other Black women making videos about y'all asking if we're going to help you all participate in this women's march, this protest on October 2nd against this abortion ban in Texas. Y'all got us fucked up. You're not about to all lives matter women's health when you know damn well y'all don't give a damn about what happens to Black women, indigenous women, or women of color.
Yep.
You care because this is about your vagina. This is about your uterus. Not because of mine. You could care less. And we know this already. You did it to us with voting. You did it to us with getting jobs. Why do you think?
Well, here's the thing. The reality is 50% of women voted for Donald fucking Trump. This would have never happened had they not voted for Donald Trump. It wouldn't have happened. He put in how many judges? Sorry, this wouldn't have happened, but it did because of Trump being elected. And that is for good measure at the doorstep of white women.
This is supposed to go differently for us all of a sudden. Because now we're all in this together like girls and pals. Meanwhile, y'all don't give a damn about the fact that Black women die at a higher rate than you when we're trying to give birth to our babies. They put on a pair of shorts because her booty be bigger than y'all's, and y'all talking about we need to protect our autonomy and our rights to our bodies. Really? Y'all still walk up to us and grab our hair and play in it. But you're telling us that we need to help you fight for your rights and your autonomy? Y'all are really out here still appropriating all of our culture whenever it's trendy for you. And you're looking at us like, help us out. We're women together. Then keep your hands to yourself when you're in the store and you see me with some braids in my hair, Becky. How about that? It's madness that y'all look at other women like, well, we got to do this. No, you do it. Because when that photo was taken, when that bill was signed, that room was real white. And there was plenty of white women in there. That's your target audience. There's the people that you need to change the minds of, not us.
That is powerful. That's very powerful.
A lot of you are going to have to come to the conclusion that,
you know, ever since coming back, I've been noticing Crutches and Spice comment section being invaded by the Handmaiden Tale Brigade. trying to convince them that they should give a fuck about what's going on in Texas. And just to make this clear, I agree with Crutches. I literally don't give a fuck about what's going on in Texas. You see, back during the election, I told y'all this was going to be Obama 2.0. Many people told you that. Let me show y'all something. You see this? 52% of people voted for Donald Trump, and 46% of people voted for Joe Biden. And my takeaway from that is that the country voted between two conservatives and chose which one they thought was less racist, less misogynist, and yet the results speak for themselves. It's almost like y'all can't enjoy brunch anymore. And just so y'all know, it's only going to get worse. So good luck.
Hello from Texas, and blessed be the... No! I said no. No more Handmaid's Tale. Do none of you seriously realize just how racist and insulting it is that you keep referencing Handmaid's Tale? This has been happening to Black and brown women for generations. And only now that this is affecting white women is the US talking about this on a grand scale. But rather than relating to the Black and brown women who have been experiencing a loss of bodily autonomy for generations, no, you're empathizing with the white fictional characters from a story that was stolen from the tales of Black women in slavery. I mean, you should have cared a long time before this. But if you couldn't manage that, can you at least manage to empathize with the real world people, not the fictional tale? I'm seriously disgusted.
So all these things, it's like the Handmaid's Tale gets used in so many different ways around different parts of feminism. It gets used within turfism, even though, ironically, the woman that wrote the Handmaid's Tale said she said trans women are women and supports trans women. But they love talking about this fictional story when you don't need the fictional story to talk about women's bodies being disrespected, being abused, being used. You literally just need to look at the history of Black women. Like, literally. I'm not even fucking kidding. If you look up speculum and Black women, the father of modern gynecology performed shocking experiments on enslaved women. He used Black bodies as medical test subjects. Like, literally. He was the president of the American Medical Association in 1876. And became, in 1880, was the president of the American Gynecological Society. You know, and the 19th century physician has been lionized with about a half a dozen statues around the country. But because of Sims' research was conducted on enslaved Black women without anesthesia, medical ethicists, historians, and others say his use of enslaved Black bodies as medical test subjects falls into a long, ethically bereft history that includes the Tuskegee syphilis experiment and Henrietta Lacks. Critics say Sims cared more about the experiments than in providing therapeutic treatment, and that he caused untold suffering by operating under the racist notion that Black people did not feel pain. So, yes, Jordan Joan P said Margaret Atwood is the writer that talked about the Handmaid's Tale. She's the writer of it. But if you look at history, you don't need the Handmaid's Tale to have this kind of dystopian kind of future. We have a past that's full of this kind of behavior, and it's been on Black bodies. Nerd Teacher says, while I like the book, I'm so fucking tired of people grabbing onto it in a way they do. Yes, and using it. Like I said, you don't need the Handmaid's Tale. White women, you don't need it. I mean, it's just, anyways. I'll let some these other creators continue.
See, you're saying this as if it's unreasonable, but I really don't think that it is. I'm not mad white women are mad about this bill. I'm mad white women are surprised. For most black women I know, this bill passing is upsetting. It is absolutely an outrage. It is not evoking the same throwing up and crying response as it is in white women because we saw this shit coming. We've been advocating against it for centuries. Forced pregnancy has always affected black women in this country. They used to force black men to rape black women, and then they would have to carry those babies to term. That's how slaves were bred. You think enslavers sexually assaulted black women and gave them access to abortions? Absolutely not. They would then enslave the children. This shit is not new. And there have been hundreds of places where white women could have chosen to stand with women of color instead of choosing to continue to align themselves with whiteness, and they didn't. So yes, absolutely. I am mad at the fact that white women are more than content to be an instrument of the patriarchy up until the second it affects them. Yeah, I'm real sick.
And that's straight on point. She makes another good point here.
I am on principle, no longer acknowledging or getting involved in discourse started by white women. It's just not worth it. Because if you're black and participating in discourse with white women, roughly 90% of your time would need to be spent deconstructing how racist all their viewpoints actually are, and I'm not doing that anymore. Truly, with the way white women have been acting after this Texas abortion ban, you are lucky I choose to associate with any of you. It's the Handmaid's Tale. No, it's what's been happening to black, brown, women of color for centuries. Y'all just cared about it way more in the Handmaid's Tale because it was happening to people who looked like you. First of all, a majority of white women voted for Trump. I am sick to death of y'all talking about, I didn't really think he'd do it. I didn't really think he'd do it. It was already being done to women of color. You didn't care then. Now what's happening to you when it's all hands on deck?
And this.
To be honest, like being nice to.
Actually, this is going to be for another part. So that bit, this has been pretty harsh, and David's cock in the chat. Try 1984. Because it's a book that's been used so much, like misused, especially by libertarians and by the right, when they are the personification of 1984. Anyways, I did want to play this from Lex though, because this is a toned down version, but still on point.
White women allies, I need you to listen to me right now. You need to go to your local Women's March page and you need to flood them with questions about intersectionality. A lot of you are coming on my posts and saying, hey, yeah, my Women's March is going to be pretty white. I'm worried about it. That's not allyship. It's not okay to let this fly. When I was asked to speak at the last Women's March, I said, do you have an Indigenous woman? Do you have a Pacific Islander? Do you have a woman with disabilities? Do you have a trans woman of color? Do you have an Asian woman? Do you have a Latinx woman? Do you have a dreamer? And I kept going down the list. And they're like, no, where do I even find those people? I can't find them. I said, no, you will find them. Now, it's uncomfortable if you're in these circles because these women are really nice. They'll be like, hey, Lex, thank you so much for speaking. That's awesome. We're glad to have you. And then you have to drill it into them over and over again. We can't hold a march where every woman in that audience isn't represented when they look on the stage. Because when we see 10 white women and one person of color, we see our oppressors up there. And yes, white women have been oppressing people of color since the dawn of time. During slavery, you ripped our children away from us. You know, you accused our men of rape. You brought punishments upon us. You starved us. Look up Madame LaLaurie and how she tortured and murdered slaves. We don't want to look on that stage and see nothing but our oppressors. And if you say nothing, you stand by and do nothing, you are complicit in this. You have to make noise. You're so excited to protest against this abortion law. But I'm also seeing you leave trans women of color behind. I saw a comment that said, only people with uteruses have a say in anything. No. Like, you're leaving trans women behind. You're so excited to get out there and put your little handsmaid tail, tone deaf shit on and march through the streets. And that is not allyship. You have to fight for intersectionality. You can't just let this fly. You can't just say, well, our march is really white. Why? When you exist and claim to be an ally, why are you allowing this to happen? You can't. You need to get out there and solve it.
You know, something that someone brought up, and that's so on point what Alexa's saying there. This is the time for white cis women to step up and be intersectional and not try to browbeat women of color into supporting this march. What I find interesting. So if we look up Women's March, there was one in 2017, and you see all the sea of pink hats. I don't know if you know or not, but those are called pussy hats. And guess what? These are all pink hats. And guess what? Not all pussies are pink. There's that girl on TikTok that makes the joke where she said, she talks about it, hers being roast beef. And not all women are white women. You know, I mean, that's the thing. This is a sea of white privilege. You can sit there and say women's rights are human rights, and you have this kind of tone deafness to pick an icon of white women's vaginas. You know, anyways, also, I want, this is a really good point too. I have issues when people try to sit there and say, well, you know, when it's all right if a woman has one abortion, but if she has 5, then it shouldn't be birth control. And I'm like, why? Why should it not be birth control? I mean, that shouldn't be a talking point. And this is totally on point. I'm not pro-choice. I'm pro-abortion. I refuse to argue the case for abortions, but what if? We deserve abortions is a full sentence. And that's the truth. No matter if you are going to have 1 or 100. Anyways. By the way, I don't know if I said it or not. This is probably going to be a short show tonight. We're about halfway in. And I think this is all I'm going to talk about on this topic. But I think it's important, and I'll tell you why it's personally important to me, besides the bodily autonomy part, is I will always stand with Black women, because for the most part, Black women have always been on the side of trans women. They have been our loudest supporters. And again, when it comes to TERFism, who are the majority of TERFs? The majority of them are white women. White, cis, affluent women. So I think it's important to know who your friends are and who the people that support you the most are. And Black women, almost to a fault, have trans women's backs and trans people's backs. So I'm not gonna be quiet on this, and I think it's important to talk about. I think it's important to talk about from so many different aspects, but that is Jordan Joan P said, I was once a big supporter of the Women's March until I heard a lot of cis and trans women of color were pushed aside. And that's the biggest takeaway that I'm taking from Lex's talk about intersectionality. It does matter, because you're talking about communities that have already been impacted. This isn't, you don't need to go to the fucking Handmaid's Tale. You don't need to go to fiction. You can go to these marginalized communities. They already know. And it's just, it is really fucking tone deaf. Really tone deaf. So, yeah. So, something tangential that I wanted to talk about, and it may not seem like it, but this is about COVID, and I wanted to play this.
Pretty damn disgusted in some Canadians today after reading this article. Having to drop cancer patients off several blocks away because they could not drop them off for their chemo appointments because of unmasked, unvaccinated assholes blocking entrances to hospitals. And yeah, you are a bunch of assholes. And this has been happening in my home country all week. And probably the most disgusting, appalling part is that these protests were coordinated and instigated by a fringe group of quack nurses who still have their licenses. Kristen Nagel is still licensed by the College of Nurses of Ontario. She was, however, fired from the NICU that she worked in London, Ontario, because who the hell would want that crazy bitch taking care of their infants? This absolute nut job, who still calls herself a nurse practitioner on the website, but actually doesn't have a nurse practitioner license, but still has an RN license, is also behind these protests. And she's also well known to the regulatory authorities for posting absolute nonsense online, including shit like this. Feel free to pause to read. And shit like this, because nothing says I'm an educated nurse practitioner who understands science when I don't even understand the basic physiology of a cell. This is disgusting. I don't even have words for this. This is a fringe group of nurses who have been riling up the public for months, if not a year, about COVID conspiracies, vaccine misinformation. And they've done it while licensed. Tell me why the College of Nurses of Ontario has not pulled the license of those two idiots. I demand to see every professional nursing organization in Canada denounce these absolute quacks and help put an end to this. These people are trying to create the illusion that healthcare workers are protesting these hospitals, when in reality, it's just the general public, the anti-vax loons that these nurses have riled up. protesting the very institutions that they would be the first ones to run to if they had cancer, if they had a broken leg, or if they were in respiratory failure because of COVID-19. This is downright criminal. It's downright disgusting. And every single person that has taken part in these protests or supported them, you all are absolutely shameful human beings. I have no words. I'm fucking pissed.
So, I'm going to bring this over. So this is from the mic. So Janet Mock gave a rousing speech on the importance of intersectional feminism, stating, "Our approach to freedom need not be identical, but it must be intersectional and inclusive. It must extend beyond ourselves. However, the need for intersectional feminism has never been more apparent than when the Women's March on Washington organizers revised a line Mock had contributed to the march's platform on sex workers, whereas Mock had written that the march would be in solidarity with sex worker rights movement. Organizers changed the language to refer to sex workers as those exploited for labor and sex." Also in DC, Raquel Willis, a communications associate at the Transgender Law Center, alleged that her microphone was cut off during a speech at the march, just as she mentioned trans activists Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson. "Still silencing trans women," she wrote on Twitter. "I see you, and so does everyone else." So yeah. So I don't blame these black women for being upset and demanding and not allowing themselves to be used in that way, when white women have routinely not been there for them and marginalized communities that they support. So I think, and by the way, Jordan Joan P., thank you for that. So I looked that up while that last clip was playing, but I think that's on point. And why I wanted to play the COVID clip, I think it's important to talk about from the standpoint of that when it comes to trans rights, what do you hear from TERFs? You hear these stories about hypothetical people. You hear these stories of the men that are going to, in fact, oh my God, I don't know. There was a tweet. Let me see if I think I liked it. By the way, I find it interesting too. There's a big discussion on the TERFs and Judith Butler was interviewed for the Guardian, and the section on TERFs and fascism had been edited out of the interview. But trying to see if I liked. No. There was a trans woman that was actually talking about this. Anyways, I don't think I'm going to be able to find it. But it's one of those things that, like, when it comes to, actually, no, let's do this. Let's go to Twitter and type in no, self-ID. Self-ID. Yeah. Bum. So I'm trying to find the original, the person that had the this is a pretty fucking hot take. But basically pointing out that when it comes to self-ID, the reality is that there has been no effects in the places where it's been where it's in place. And you can't argue with that. You can't argue with that. And because it's been I believe it's been a couple years in Ireland, where I'm from in Indiana, it's been like that. And TERFs are so, they're all over this. They are all over this. But you know what? All of their in fact, I think this is Ireland is quite safe and a very accepting country to be openly transgender. We are lucky to have self-ID and a gender recognition cert. It's a shame, however, we have the gatekeeping convergent gender clinic who relies on pseudoscience and the Bible to treat us. But yeah, they have it in Ireland. They have it in Ireland, and it's there's a lot of discussion on here, but pointing it out, the reality is that nothing has happened when self-ID has been put in place. It's hypotheticals. It's always fucking hypotheticals. It's never about actual human beings. So, all right. So you got this. But it's similar. It's similar. What's it similar to? It's similar to stories about women having abortions, about hypotheticals. You're talking about a hypothetical baby. You're not actually talking about a real baby. Because let's look. What is the definition? By the way, definition of death. Legally. Let's say legally. Legal, medical. Bum. Medical definition of death. The end of life, the cessation of life. The common definitions of death ultimately depend on the definition of life, which there is no consensus. The permanent cessation of all vital body functions. The definition is dependent on vital body functions. So the common law standard for determining death is the cessation of all vital functions, traditionally demonstrated by the absence of spontaneous respiratory and cardiac functions. The uniform determination of death. The National Conference on Commissioners on the Uniform State Laws in 1980 formulated the Uniform Determination of Death Act. It states that an individual who has sustained either a reversible cessation of circulatory or respiratory functions or a irreversibly cessation of all functions of the entire brain, including the brainstem, is dead. Okay. This is important because if this is how you define death, which is brain function and heart function, you reverse that and flip it. That is life. If you have a heartbeat, if you have brain function, you're considered alive. So, and the funny thing is the Christian right will talk about the fetal heartbeat. Is the fetal heartbeat really a heartbeat at 6 weeks? Guess what? It's not. 11 so far. This is from Live Science. So far this year, 11 states have enacted 90 laws meant to restrict abortion. Now lawmakers, blah, 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 blah. But what do we mean when we talk about fetal heartbeat at 6 weeks of pregnancy? Although some people might picture a heart-shaped organ beating inside the fetus, this is not the case. Rather, at 6 weeks of pregnancy, an ultrasound can detect a little flutter in the area that will become the future heart of the baby. Because this flutter happens because the group of cells that will become the future pacemaker of the heart gain the capacity to fire electrical signals, she said. So there isn't a heartbeat, but more importantly, brain activity. Brain activity in fetus starts. There we go. Where does it start? Between 12 and 16, the brain structures. The brain structures appear. That's what it's saying. The very beginnings of the brain, our higher brain structure, only start to appear between 12 and 16 weeks. Crucially, the coordinated brain activity required for consciousness does not occur into 24 to 25 weeks of pregnancy. Go figure. It's 26 weeks is usually the cutoff for abortions. That's why. But 8DX in the chat said so many states already have laws on the books with if Roe falls. That's the thing. This has been in the works forever. And this isn't, technically, it's not a ban on abortion. But it is. It's a legal maneuver that effectively makes abortion illegal. So, but what I want to focus on, especially with that reference to COVID, is TERFs and anti-abortion people. They always talk about hypotheticals. They always talk about hypothetical children. But when it comes to like actually taking care of children, they don't support welfare programs for children. They don't support school programs for children. They don't support supporting actual children. Some people play it on their show, but I don't want to get a takedown. But there's a bit by George Carlin about abortion. I don't want to play it. I don't want to play it. The controversial new abortion laws have been introduced in the state of Texas, and those opened up a wave of criticism and opposition to the new sanctions, which prevent women from terminating the birth after 6 weeks of pregnancy. Everyone from Greta Thunberg and to the Satanic Temple has voiced their anger and concern about the oppressive law known as the Heartbeat Act, which was signed into law by Greg Abbott in May. Earlier this week, the U.S. Supreme Court chose not to vote against the law, which allows citizens to take legal action against doctors or anyone else who helps terminate a pregnancy. Those who win their cases could be entitled to at least $10,000. Although this radical new legislation has shed light on the abortion debate in the United States, the topic, who gets to decide what a woman does with her body, especially men, is unfortunately not new in the U.S. Take, for instance, the stand-up comedy routine from the late, great George Carlin when he performs in 1996 on his HBO special Back in Town. The astute and witty comic rants at the hypocrisy of social conservatives who have campaigned against abortions and birth control for years, but have also lobbied against social programs that would have supported low-income and struggling families. They're all in favor of the unborn, Carlin says. They will do anything for the unborn, but once you're born, you're on your own. Pro-life conservatives are obsessed with fetus from conception to 9 months. After that, they don't want to know about you. And yeah, they're not pro-life. They're anti-woman. Yeah, that is straight on. But yeah, I don't care what Joe Biden said about it. But yeah, so it's always these hypothetical arguments instead of actual lives of actual people. When it comes to white women and these stories, they go to the fucking Handmaid's Tale. They don't go to the literal history of black women. When it's TERFs, they go to these stories that don't relate to women's lives and trans women's actual lived experience of being assaulted, of being sexually abused, of being physically abused. No, they go to these hypotheticals. These COVID people, they go to hypotheticals. They don't care about real, actual people. They don't give a shit at the end of the day. It's about hypotheticals. It's not about the lives of actual people. So that's my thought on that. Remind me, before we go off the air, I do want to talk about Twitter and a new kind of program. Oh, I found this funny as shit. I did want to talk about this for a minute.
How fucking arrogant do you have to be to believe that there's an entire agenda out here to emasculate men? Like what happens after that? After the full emasculation of men, what is the final goal? What is the fucking end goal after that? Have y'all thought about that? Like, what's the purpose? Why is there an entire agenda to do this? Some of y'all are weird. Some strange individuals you are.
I always laugh at stuff like this. Again, it's one of those things that, like, what they're saying is, like, what is the end goal of this agenda? When you're talking about the gay agenda or the trans agenda, it's always like this spooky thing. And like, what is the actual agenda? And when you ask cis men, especially when it's about emasculating men, it's about, they go into this conservative rant. Even people that I wouldn't say, hello, Phoenix, even people that aren't specifically even, I don't even know where was I going with that? When it comes to these arguments, it's like, where the fuck are you going with it? Like, ultimately, what does it do? What is the point of this agenda to emasculate men? It boils down, what it always comes back to, it's about the family. It's destruction of the family. It's destruction of the children. Help us, Jesus. That's usually where it goes. Oh my God. 8DX says Handmaid's Tale is explicitly what it would be if cis white women had it bad too. And that's right to the point. That's right to the point. Black women have already had it shitty and have already had their bodily autonomy violated. A history of it that goes back centuries. But these people they need to be oppressed. And as soon as they are, they make it all about them. Yeah. Oh, Lord have mercy. Some random geek says, they're talking about what dead is. My thing has always been around these, again, it's fucking hypotheticals. But where is this logical endpoint with the trans agenda? Where does it go? It always goes back to or it's Jews, some TERFs have, said that the Jews are funding big pharma because trans drugs are so profitable. But they don't care about actual lives. They don't care about actual lives of people that can no longer afford fucking drugs for their diabetes. That the prices of insulin have skyrocketed. Or you can go on down the line, different medicines. They don't care. They care about owning the trans. And they'll do it any way they can. And again, when it comes to the gay agenda, it's all about the family and the destruction of the family. And it's always this hypothetical plan, this hypothetical emasculation, as if this emasculation happens in a vacuum. Like if only they want trans people and people that are gender nonconforming, they want them to suffer. They want them to not exist. They don't care that we exist. They just don't want us to exist. Oh, by the way, I need to share something with you. So I got this fucked up comment over on Trans Advocate. You look like Chris Chan boy, and this is from the channel Trans Women Are Sexist Men. This was a comment left on Starmer is a transphobe, abortion isn't murder, Biden sucks, and Pratchett hates TERFs. I'm like, first off, you got to fucking do better than that. But I really do get tired of people like this. I did report them. But it's like, fucking try harder. You obviously didn't get the win that you thought you were going to get. Doesn't hurt my feelings. I don't care what you think. I mean, oh man. You know, the one that hurt the worst, I'll be honest with you. I'll tell you. Is when a patient of mine said I looked like this. Oh, you look like Alice Cooper. That hurt. That left a mark. And you know, if Alice Cooper was halfway fucking cool, maybe that I could have lived with that. And I'm not gonna lie, I can see the resemblance. I can. We kind of have the same chin, for sure. But I thought that was funny. It was hurtful at the same time. Oh, it was hilarious. And that's the thing. I do think it's funny when TERFs try this shit thinking, I don't know how I look. This is the body that I was given, you know? Jordan Jones P said that comment like, okay, and that's it. Are you done? Exactly. Is that all you got? Where are you going? Where are you going? Because I know what I look like. You know, I've had to come to terms with that. Your stupid comments might have hurt 15 years ago, but I transitioned in 2001. Sorry. I've been in newspapers. I've been in, I've been in media. I don't care what you think of me. And that's the reality that basically at the end of the day that I came to, was that I know who I am. It doesn't matter if other people do, or I want them to understand about my life, but at the same time, I don't have to debate my existence, and I'm not going to. Fuck those people. Fuck them. I don't care. You can say that's the funny thing. TERFs either have this helicopter joke, or they'll claim that you don't look like a woman, and then the actual question that you should ask with that is, well, then what does a woman look like? Because that's just kind of shit they'll pull. Or I'll say, looks like me. But that being said, I do think it's funny. Because you can comment shit like this. I don't care. And in fact, your comments just boost the channel. Like I said, I don't care. I don't care. One of my mutuals is actually being harassed right now by of all people, fucking Blair White.
Good morning. I just want to say, I know about this. And it wasn't necessarily a flattering appearance. This is the second time Blair White has talked about me on social media and said very, very poor things. So just know that I know that she's talking about me, and I don't need you to tell me that she's still talking about me, because trust me, when there's an influx of hatred and comments misgendering me and telling me to kill myself, I know that it's because Miss Blair White decided to talk about me again. Keeping the last time she talked about me in context, I haven't even watched this video. I might do a formal reaction to it, really analyzing and attacking the fact that she never makes any actual points. She just bullies people. But why are you watching Blair White in the first place if you're following someone like me?
Yeah. The only reason I can think of is that you're just like Blair White. But yeah, I thought that was a good thing to talk about. On a separate note, I'm just going to play some of these random videos that I found interesting.
So many people on this app defend Western imperialism. Western intervention has never left any country better off than what it was before. The West continues to wage economic warfare and destabilize countries all over the world.
That is such a good point. I sit there and thought about that, and I was like, "Fuck! What war could you say?" I could think of like Japan, the Monroe Doctrine, and you could say that those countries were positively impacted, but since World War II, that has been false. That has been false. 8DX says everyone is on WW2 brain. Yes, they'll bring that up. But the reality is, since then, this is true.
While not so subtly stealing the resources needed for that country's prosperity and betterment of their people. Any country and their people have the right to self-determination and can decide for themselves whether they need a regime change. They don't need the West for that. Our job in the imperial core is to hold our leaders accountable and put a stop to this shit. It's really that simple.
And that's totally on point. Totally on point. If you live in a country that is part of that core, and the country that I'm from and the country that I live in currently both are in that category. But I thought that was a brilliant take as far as American imperialism, it hasn't done jack shit in terms of helping people. If you look, let's have a look. How much a day do Iraqis have electricity? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-bow. Da-da-da-da-da. Let's see when this is from. The last time that I looked, let's see. Post-war, the demand. I'm trying to say this doesn't really help you, but this was this is literally 2018. Like 2018, they were talking about electricity cuts. While those who can afford it pay an average of 125 dinars, approximately $100 a month, to make up for the cuts. For many poor and working class Iraqis, buying electricity is not an option. Power shortages have been endemic in Iraq, a country wrecked by a series of conflicts. Fuck off, Al Jazeera. I can't believe Al Jazeera would actually write something like this. Power shortages have become endemic in Iraq, a country wrecked by a series of conflicts that have devastated its infrastructure. Invasions by America for no fucking reason. The problem was exacerbated earlier in the month after Iran stopped supplying electricity to Iraq because of unpaid bills. Our lives are intolerable. This is what America did. They had electricity when Saddam Hussein was in power. They haven't had electricity since on a regular basis. Using up approximately 8,000 liters of fuel every 4 to 5 days, the generator provides 70 households, mostly professionals and businessmen, with electricity. So, and then they ask the question, is this weak infrastructure or corruption? The infrastructure was destroyed by America. The main problem lies in the weakness of infrastructure which distributes the electricity. Explaining that some of the distribution points were built in the 1960s and 70s and haven't been properly maintained or renewed. Fuck you! You literally had the United States bomb the shit out of that country day in and day out for years, for decades, and not rebuild at all. So and there are people citing official figures. AFP news agency reported that Iraq has allocated at least $40 billion of its state budget to rebuild its power network. But as the country still struggles to cope with electricity shortages, many Iraqis believe some funds have been mismanaged or embezzled. Some electricity ministers have been sacked over corruption and forced to quit. Again, why is it America not? I mean, this is what kills me too. When people were talking about the war in Afghanistan, why, and one of the reasons why that it fell so quickly, and if you go infrastructure, money, Afghanistan, and then half I think I pointed to this. 24 billion in where was that? Because there were like 30 billion on other reconstruction programs. Much of that money was wasted on programs that were poorly conceived or riddled with corruption. The Inspector General documented 15.5 billion in waste. So out of this, half were embezzled, were basically documented to be waste, fraud, and abuse in between 2008 and 2017. So the United States is allocating money But they're not going in. Again, this is so fucking typical, because we have people that build bridges, we have people that build bombs, we have people that build all these kind of stuff, but they don't fucking build infrastructure for the countries that they're going to go in and destroy. And that's just a fact. There's no war since World War II that's ever been fought where the people are better off afterwards with United States involvement. It's not fucking happened. And I don't think that's I don't think that's an accident. Why?
So when I said that we shouldn't be dependent on the state, I quickly followed it up by saying, especially if it's ran by oligarchs, which is basically what we have now. Our entire government was founded on the foundation of property ownership. Whoever owns things, those are the people with the power. And with that being said, the state bends at the will of the owners and not the majority of the people, the masses. So what the state does is they kind of subsidize these things that capitalism fail at, like feeding people and educating people and making sure people have healthcare and housing. And since, again, our state bends at the wills of these capitalists, they constantly cut these programs. This dependency on these programs creates sort of like a pacification of the masses, and it kind of prevents a revolt of any sort. However, if the state was ran by the masses, the proletariat, then my tune would be a little bit different. The needs of the people would be met if the people ran the government. Secondly, ANCAP is like a contradiction. Capitalism needs a state in order to operate. It needs enforcers.
8DX in the chat said, which is ultimately the empire on empire action war. Just like India was 24% of worldwide commerce before the English came along. And then said, some funds have been mismanaged or embezzled. Some? Wow, that's surprising, as if that's not how everything works both in both the wars. And here's the thing. When it comes to what they consider, like embezzled or mismanaged, I always laugh when people will sit there and say, the United States lost the Afghanistan war. No, they didn't. The people that fund their campaigns, the military-industrial complex, had a transfer of $2 trillion. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, those type of contractors, military-industrial complex people. BlackRock, that kind of thing, they fucking won. But yeah. So anyways, I thought this was interesting as well.
What is something important that you've told someone but they refuse to believe you? I'll go first.
That systemic change will never ever happen through voting, and anybody still gullible enough to believe that is a liability. And here's why. Anybody have any idea where those 10,000 Yahtzees ended up? Any idea at all? You see, while y'all keep arguing with Trumpers and debating masks and vaccines, white supremacy has been consistently consolidating its power. You can vote, march, and protest as much as you want. You're still going to get what you've been getting. And I really wish the rest of you would get that, because we don't have a lot of time left.
I think that's totally on point. And this kind of relates to it.
I'm just leaving my favorite Kroger with the high security in it, and I'm sitting here wondering to myself, do these security guards ever think to themselves, I am willing to put my whole fucking life on the line to prevent a motherfucker from eating? No, they don't, because this system is designed to have it to where they don't even have to question the shit that they do. They're here to do a job so that they can get a check, so that they can eat. And if that means getting in the way of someone else
from having a fucking meal, they'll do that because they need the check. They need to fucking eat. This system creates fucking overseers and stupid ass jobs like that to do all of the fucking dirty work for the ruling class. This is $1 billion corporation and they're paying someone scraps to protect property. And they're willingly taking those scraps to do that. Only if the check that they are getting prevents them from being that person that needs to come in there and snatch a loaf of bread off the shelf. This system is perfectly designed like that to make us turn on each other.
Well, 8DX in the chat ask the question. Okay, I don't know how marching isn't good. It doesn't do anything. The impact that it has is diminished. Think about it. Let's have a look. Well, I think it was let's say 2001. So it was 2002. Or 2003. So literally, you had people. Let's see if anything comes up. You literally had people protesting the Iraq War, and there were millions. Let's see. There were millions of people protesting around the world, and nothing happened. All those protests did nothing to change anything. Here we go.
Big Ben told as the huge crowd marched to stop the countdown to war against Iraq. A seemingly endless current of marchers.
Oh, it was tremendous. I mean, I think it's one of the few demonstrations where people really thought they could stop a war, and therefore they felt them turning out individually as opposed to reading about it in the newspaper or saying, oh, that's a good thing when they watched it on television.
As Mayor of London, I can officially welcome you here to this city in the biggest political demonstration in 2,000 years of British history.
It's hard to think of any one event that has brought so many different nations' protest movements together in that way. And I think it's just, people aren't stupid, that they could see that what George W. Bush was about wasn't human rights, it was about controlling the oil. And they didn't think that killing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in the Middle East was worth that.
In Sydney, more than 200,000 demonstrators crammed into Hyde Park before bringing the city to a standstill.
The crowd here in New York City is quite larger than they had expected. We know right now that they are blocking off from 52nd Street all the way down to 72nd Street on First Avenue, north of the United Nations.
Every faith, every age, every race. I have never seen anything that brought the diversity of British people together so much.
More than 1 million, say police, on the streets of the Eternal City.
America thought it was unstoppable after the collapse of the Soviet Union. What it did have was its own population, the British population, the population of all of its allies, were saying, you're not doing this in our name. We don't agree with this. We do not want this to happen. And we think that if you're reordering the world, you shouldn't be doing it by invading and bombing and occupying other people's countries.
No, ATX. No, that's not. The point is, these were some of the largest protests in history. They did nothing. Protest, nonviolent protest, nonviolence. MLK did not practice nonviolence because it was a good and righteous thing. He practiced nonviolence because it was an effective way to change the minds of people that were seeing it happen. Legislators, human beings that were watching it on television. You have to think about tactics. A march, they had a march in Washington. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't do. You need to take action, actual action. That doesn't mean everyone should stay home. But protests, I mean, honestly, they don't do anything these days because A, they don't get a lot of coverage. I mean, to be honest with you, this and maybe Occupy Wall Street, David Skog is right. Violence is power. And 8DX, I'm sorry, but sometimes it does things though. Sometimes it makes people think 10 years later. This makes me think it doesn't fucking work. Like literally, this is the largest. It's the world crying out. I mean, literally, Cairo, Mexico, all across the world, people were yelling and saying this war is unjust. And it happened anyways. And it didn't just happen for a year or 3 years or 5 years. You know? I mean, it happened over what? From 2003 to 2011. The invasion part. And the war from ISIL was 2013 to 2017. I mean, it didn't do anything. So, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. You know, I'm not going to sit here and argue repeatedly about that. But I can understand, I can truly understand what our comrade here is saying. Yeah, here's another one. This is from Commie Trucker.
People like to say that fascism is capitalism in decay. I think capitalism is fascism. It's just fascism that happens to people we're all accustomed to ignoring. Who do you think this Texas abortion bill is aimed at? It's not aimed at the children of white, wealthy business people. It's aimed at people of color, the impoverished, the indigenous. And so long as we're accustomed to ignoring these people, then they're going to continue to be brutalized. So, I don't know. I like to give kind of a hopeful message at the end of my videos, but the only way I can see things improving in regards to the sweeping Texas abortion ban that's going to be hitting every state soon is by putting our lives in between the lives of the marginalized and the brutality of the police. Because I don't think dressing up in Handmaid's Tale cosplay is going to do much. The only thing those in power listen to is disruption of capital. We have to bring the reality of the horrors that they're making to the doorsteps of those in power.
And that, honestly, 8X, 8DX, this is exactly what it is, where the truth lies to me. So, I mean, and there are places, there are places that are doing things that are what I would be considered progressive, like this.
Dutch cities want to ban property investors in all neighborhoods, make wide use of a legislative amendment that will allow them to designate neighborhoods where investors won't be allowed to buy cheap and medium-priced homes and rent them out.
But something like that is not going to happen in America. You know? I mean, literally. I mean, you have jokers like this.
Here's how much rent I collect every month on my 167 rental properties. Here's how much profit I make off the back of hundreds of families while hoarding housing and not providing any equity to those who are providing my entire sense of living. There, fixed it for you.
Okay. David Skog says smashing the windows of your local 7-Eleven isn't going to change anything. I agree. There are a couple. Well, to be honest with you, smashing the windows of your local 7-Eleven. To be honest with you, the person that's probably smashing the windows of your local 7-Eleven is probably a fucking. It's probably a cop, as we saw with the BLM. A couple more videos that I want to play that aren't jokes. But this one I thought was pretty on point.
Back to self-made is a toxic myth. After years of busking and playing small shows, Ed Sheeran rocketed to stardom when he self-released his first album. Overnight, it hit #2 on the iTunes charts, and the rest is history. What that narrative leaves out is that Ed Sheeran was born rich. His father was a curator at Cartwright Hall in Bradford, and his mother worked at Manchester City Art Gallery. Together, they owned an art consulting agency named Sheeran Locke. They organized many arts exhibitions for celebrities and royalty, like the 50th birthday exposition of the Prince of Wales at Hampton Court Palace, the United Nations Millennium Exhibit in New York. Ed attended Framlingham College Prep School, where tuition is $25 to $33K per year. I think it's important to point out that Ed Sheeran is not the problem here. Neither is Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish, Kid Rock, or anyone else that I focus on in this series. Whether or not their music is good, or they deserve success, or they're good people, isn't the ultimate issue I'm concerned with. The issue is the self-made narrative, the work hard and follow your dreams narrative, otherwise known as the American dream narrative, right? It's a pleasant fiction that we've all been brainwashed to believe since birth by the capitalist ruling class. Did you know that only 25 families control over 1.7 trillion of the world's wealth? They're able to do that through essentially unrestricted capitalism, our current system. And they have a vested interest in not only hoarding, but growing that wealth, which means they also have a vested interest in keeping all of us believing in rags to riches stories instead of focusing on on a wealth tax. Part of Ed Sheeran's narrative is that he was homeless, which even Ed Sheeran says isn't true. Sure, he did sleep in his car and on the train a few times in between shows, but he was never chronically unhoused. Also, he's installing anti-homeless spikes outside of his $8 million home like the hypocrite he is, but I digress. The point is that the down under their luck homeless musician to superstar artist is such a compelling narrative that the media focuses on it and runs with it, even if it isn't true. I get a lot of comments on these videos saying something to the effect of, you're jealous, stop whining, work hard. If that's your opinion, then I have compassion for you, because what you're doing is parroting propaganda that's been fed to you directly through music, movies, TV, and news companies that are owned by the ruling class. For example, let's pretend that there are two musicians. One is wealthy and one is not. And let's pretend they're both really talented, they both work hard, they play a bunch of shows, they record demos, they promote themselves, etc. Each of our pretend musicians have an equal chance at success, right? Wrong. How much time you can put into pursuing a career in the arts is entirely dependent on how much wealth you or your family has. Why? Because being an artist pays shit unless you're really, really successful. Which means if you don't have a cushion of money to support you, then you have to get a job. In our current economy, more like 2 jobs. Pay all your bills like housing, food, transportation, medical care, etc. But for the sake of argument, let's also pretend that we have universal basic income and those basic needs are covered. Then it's an equal playing field, right? Wrong. Because it still costs money to even be an artist. If you come from enough money, these costs are not obstacles to you. They're just steps. If you come from money, you have the most precious resource in the world. Time. Does that mean that somebody with money is guaranteed to make it? No, but their hard work goes a hell of a lot farther than our hard work. And that's before you even factor in race, gender, orientation. So to all my fellow artists, remember, try not to compare yourselves and your career trajectory to someone who was born on third base.
Yep. David. Ed Sheeran is violence. I think some random geek puts it great in a great way. Violence is not always the answer, but peace and protest is not always the answer. We have to think about there's a time and a place for violence, though. It's part of the diversity of tactics, and I do believe that that's more often not something that's more conducive to getting change. Even with BLM protests, there was a narrative that there was violent tension, and that made people want to change things. Jordan Joan P. So as a musician, I'm screwed. Pretty much. You're not on first base. You're on home plate, and you're swinging your bat. Doesn't mean you're screwed. It just means you've got to go a lot further. And I never noticed that when these animations are over that my head's covered up. That's weird. All right. One more serious video. And this one I just thought was really good because of how it kind of shows how inequality works. So I thought that was a pretty good. I mean, it's got some oversimplifications, but it was pretty accurate. So I did find this on ivermectin. It's the medicine that the conservative COVID deniers are using, and it's a fucking horse dewormer. I found this video and I thought it was pretty funny
Now
from
more
Lex.
than ever, it's important for Americans to take care of their health. When it comes to protecting yourself against the COVID-19 virus, the FDA-approved vaccine might not be the right choice for patients who are allergic to reality. That's why there's ivermectin, the COVID-19 treatment option for real patriots. With
And I'm going to leave you tonight with a quote from Divine when it comes to this whole abortion thing. Somebody posted this.
Survive on its own. If your moral framework allows for the killing of anything that can't survive by itself, then you'd also have to concede that it's morally permissible to kill infants and toddlers.
Political beliefs. Kill everyone now. Condone first-degree murder. Advocate cannibalism. Eat shit.
I'm going to leave you with that. Good night, everyone. Oh, dear. Have a lovely evening. I love you guys. By the way, I can't do this without saying mutual aid. If you want to help your friends in need, go to, where should I go to, Jonathan? I should go to charitylinks.page. Also, if you want to help our comrade out, Comrade Sparkles, go to Fanbase. You can jump on Fanbase, so you can subscribe to his channel, and he gets paid. And by the way, bum 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 bum. We'll be having a show on Saturday. Saturday we're not having a show. I'll tell you what, I will do a show on Monday. I will do a show just like this on Monday and then another one on Wednesday. But I'm working night shift on Saturday night, so I can't. But I do want to bring you guys a show. So I will do one. But it'll be on Monday night. I will see you then. See y'all. Have a good night.